welcome to the show. My name is Charlton with Big C. This is Charlton at Big C Sports, coming to you worldwide on the Big C Sports Network, on the #1 network in the United States of America. And Big C Sports has been voted the #1 sports show in the universe, according to Big C. And the good old boys down south, I want to say bienvenidos to all of our listeners in Latin America, also across the pond, and London, England, as well as Paris, France, of course. You good old boys in Canada, we love you in Africa, the Big C tribe, but there's no one we love more than the good old boys down south in the land of the free and the home of the brave on a beautiful April the 1st, 2020. Ground of the Portes, Big C is still out mining for gold. I was talking to him today, and he's still got to get back down and get some gold before all them good old boys show up. You know, whenever the black man finds it, somebody's going to come along and try to take it from you. I think it's all fair, love, and war. We like to have our fun, too. I want to say today's show is sponsored by your Northern California Cadillac dealers, home of the all-new Cadillac Escalade, the standard of the world. And when you go by and test drive yours, tell them Charlton and Big C sent you, as well as a fleet of Cadillac cars. Also, Big C Sports is powered by Google and Alexa. Just say Google or Alexa, play Big C Sports Podcast. You will hear from our sponsors. You will hear welcome to the show. I will introduce Big C as the Mystic from 3,000 miles away, and he will do his thing, and I really appreciate the way things are going with Big C Sports. You can also follow Big C Sports on Xfinity, Comcast TV, Roku TV, Amazon Fire TV, Apple TV, and a lot of smart TVs all over the universe. Really appreciate the way things are going with Big C Sports. Man, I love saying, and sometimes I hate saying that we need it, but we do need it. You ever have something that you need and something that you want at the same time? Sometimes you got to have a need and you got to have a want. But do you need your needs or do you need your wants? Whatever it is, I do know that we need this Veterans Crisis Hotline. They are experienced at helping veterans and their loved ones. And boy, do they really need it now. 800-273-8255. 800-273-8255. Or you can text 838-255. That's 838-255. If you're online, go to veteranscrisisline.net. That's veteranscrisisline.net, and you can hopefully get some help. There's a lot of people that really need some help. Going to talk about some more of that coming up in the show also. Really excited about a real estate listing channel in the spring of 2020, and the goal is to recruit 100 real estate brokers to put their property listings on TV, just like McDonald's, just like car dealerships, just like other sporting events. When you watch TV, you see what advertisers are paying for. Well, the same thing happens for real estate. Imagine having average price of $500,000. You get 100 brokers getting 2 listings a month. That's $100 million in listings. If the average price of a home, which is what you find a lot of times in the LA basin, the average price of a home is $1 million. You get 100 brokers listing that, and that's $100 million. And that does a lot to help the economy. No matter what's going to happen with real estate, prices going up or down, the market going up or down, rates are as low as they're ever going to be. And I know as we get back on our feet, people will still be doing that. Also, some talks about having a podcast TV show that will air on the weekends, and talks about making that happen right now. So that also may be part of what the Big C team can bring to the world of real estate, and that'll be sometime this spring also. Everybody has an option of what they want to do. I want to just make an announcement. I know Gavin Newsom has talked about everybody kind of on lockdown in California for non-essential activities. Of course, our first responders, police, fire departments, hospital workers, people that work in the grocery stores. There's so much that has to happen. Transportation services that move food up and down the state of California and all over the country. Well, Florida just went on lockdown today. It took them a while. I guess they did not believe in science, but they're figuring it out that science does matter. If we could just get Texas to do the same thing. I know there's a lot of people that still don't believe in science, but that's important too. I just want to make sure that we do our part in the world of sports and entertainment. So really looking forward to that real estate channel coming. And a lot of people love sports and they love real estate. May as well do them. I love looking at that aspect of life too. And I know today there's just so much going on in the world of sports. I'll talk about it a little bit later too. I know POTUS has been giving press conferences on a daily basis. He and Mike Pence they are not practicing social distancing. I mean, I love Dr. Fauci, and I love when they talk Surgeon General Jerome Adams. There's a lot of people who are doing a great job in getting that message out there. But when I watch Mike Pence and POTUS, they're about 3 feet away from each other at times. I know Dr. Fauci always steps back, but I hope that our leaders can show by example and not just word of mouth, because that's important too, to make sure that people are taking this serious. I know the numbers are climbing as far as fatalities in the United States of America based on what was at one time called a Democratic hoax. It's not a hoax. We got medical science to prove that it's not. And I just believe that people can capitulate. People can apologize and say, you know what? I was wrong. The misinformation that I gave you, it may have cost a lot of people to believe in them and may have put themselves in harm's way. And no matter who you are, no one cares about your life more than you. Doesn't matter who you are. You got to put your own health first and not worry about what you hear on TV or podcast or radio, because a lot of times people are getting paid to say what they're saying, and that's, you can put that in your own mind and think about that when you hear that. Coronavirus in the world of sports, as of March 2020, people were affected by this business, the business world. No one's in school now. My son just went by school and picked up a computer to do some more homework. And, we already have computers, but I guess they gave it to him for some reason. And I know that everybody still has to figure out how to put food in the belly of the children. And I feel we're very blessed to be able to just say that we can do that. And I know that everybody has that championship hope inside of them that things are going to get better. Like a champion fighter, they always believe they're going to win the fight. Ali believed that he could beat George Foreman. Mike Tyson believed that he could beat Holyfield. Joe Frazier believed he could beat Ali. Everybody believes in something. But so I believe in these school districts that are telling kids, you can come by and get food, and if you can stay online, get online somehow, you can learn how to get educated. And that's important. I know we got to make sure, even though school is out, that everybody can still figure out what to do. I just want to talk briefly about the timeline and the impact of coronavirus in sports. In 2020, everybody's doing the Big C pause. Big C, the spread of the coronavirus, it accelerated across the United States. A number of sports leagues, they altered their schedules. Some have gone on suspension. Others have gone on the pause to deal with this pandemic. According to the World Health Organization, there's a number of cases that have been growing with COVID-19. And as of the evening of just yesterday, the end of March 31st, there are a lot of cases. People tested positive. It doesn't mean it's going to be fatal. There have been worldwide some fatalities, of course, more than we want to hear, especially when you hear the news that's happened in the United States of lately. So the sports landscape is affected, is altered by it. People are not playing games. They're doing things behind closed doors, like playing video games. Me, I'm not the man that says, get off my lawn. But I would love to see grown men interacting with science and medicine, and having people come on to those programs instead of playing video games like a child. Instead of playing video games, maybe put up more information, some PSAs about what people can do to get safe, or to be safer, or to protect our elderly, our grandparents, our parents, whatever it takes. I would rather see that put to good use more than seeing grown men playing a video game. So think about this. It was Tuesday, March 31st, about 9:30 a.m. The Chinese government issued an order to continuing restrictions on sports teams because of COVID-19, which delays in the resumption of the Chinese Basketball Association. Who really cares about going into a basketball game when the numbers of people passing away is climbing? Doesn't make any sense. I know some people want to put their head in the sand. Maybe they're finding that it's a little bit easier to deal with reality when you don't have to focus on it. March 30th, on Monday, about 10:33 p.m., the Bellator MMA bout postponed 3 events. The Bellator 242, and they have the Bellator European Series in London, that May 16th. The one for 242 in the United States is May 9th. And then Bellator 243, May 29th. Those have all been affected by the Big C pause. Everybody's pausing in sports. 12:35 p.m., and this was also Monday, March 30th, the Pac-12, they extended its suspension of all team-related activities through May 31. That's important. They're paying attention to it. Also, at 8:17, there's Barcelona star Lionel Messi said the team's players will take 70% wage cuts to make other contributions to help the club's workers during Spain's state of emergency. I mean, that was pretty amazing that a multimillionaire is the vanguard, at least for his team, and in that sport, talking about taking a pay cut to help people. And this is important, too, because it affects the whole universe, at least in the sports world. 8:05 a.m., the International Olympic Committee, International Paralympic Committee, and the Tokyo 2020 Games Organizing Committee and the Tokyo Metropolitan Government announced the Olympic Games will take place July 23rd through August 8th, 2021. That's important. The Paralympic Games will also take place August 24th to September 5th, 2021. So people are listening. People are listening. And there is light at the end of the tunnel. I know that seems antithetical to what we're hearing right now, but at 9:21 p.m. Sunday, March 29th, just a timeline of where were you when this news came out. It affects sports. It affects business. It affects the pause. Everybody's doing the Big C pause now. Boston Celtics guard Marcus Smart, he announced that he had been cleared of COVID-19 by the Massachusetts Department of Health. That's important because everybody's afraid to get COVID-19, but it's not a fatality for everybody. Everybody has things that happen in life. Phones are ringing, people are calling me all the time trying to find out what's going on, and not everybody's aware of what to do. And so I want to Google as much as I can about math and science and pay attention to what Dr. Fauci is doing. But I do want to just ask Dr. Fauci, I know you follow athletes too. You were a basketball player as a young boy. Practice social distancing when you're around the White House doing those press conferences. They've come in contact with so many people, and they're saying they have not tested positive. But we know a lot of times those same people that say they haven't tested positive, they said it was a Democratic host. You can Google that yourself. Hey, also it's important, at 8:42 p.m. it was announced also on Sunday, the International Boxing Hall of Fame's 31st annual induction weekend had been postponed from June 14th, 2020 to the week of June 10th to the 13th in 2021. That's important. So where were you when these announcements came out? Many people that follow sports, maybe they're aware. There are people who don't follow sports, maybe they're not aware. So the antithesis of that is true also. There are many people who follow sports that don't know what's going on in the news. Because a lot of our sports brethren, they're showing them old replays of Michael Jordan's basketball series in basketball history. Not that that's not important to people, but in a pandemic, when the house is burning and the floods are coming and the fires grew, you're in the house watching basketball as opposed to learning how to keep yourself and your family healthy. Everybody has their own choice. Everybody has their own way of thinking, and everyone has their own opinion. On Saturday, March 28th, about 9:06 p.m., New York Knicks owner and Madison Square Garden owner James Dolan tested positive for COVID-19. The team announced then, and Dolan is experiencing little to no symptoms, and he's self-isolating while continuing to oversee business. So everybody has a lot of things that we deal with, but I don't want to just act like we're just sports. I don't want to be that dumbed down sports show. I listened to a lot of sports talk since I was about really 8 years old. My father was always into sports. My mom was into sports. My family members were into sports, as well as entertainment, as well as politics, as well as the church. You know, serve this country in the Air Force, in the Army, and the Marines. Family members doing that. So everybody has their thoughts on what they can do to make life better. And I want to simply do my part with Big C Sports. Colorado Avalanche at 1:17 p.m. And this is going all the way back to Saturday, March 28th. It's about where were you when you heard these announcements? Well, the Colorado Avalanche, they announced the second player had tested positive for COVID-19 Friday, March 27th, 5:37 p.m. Los Angeles Sparks guard Sydney Weiss announced that she had tested positive for COVID-19. 2:42 p.m. ESPN broadcaster Doris Burke told one of her colleagues that she had tested positive for COVID-19. Why is that important? I'm going to tie it into what I'm telling you. This is why I implore many of our sports brethren to realize that not everybody watches the news. Not everybody's tuned into what's going on with medical and science, and if we can do that, it would keep them safer, especially for those fans or those students from Texas that went down to Mexico and 28 of them tested positive for coronavirus. Maybe they didn't pay attention to the news. They may watch sports. Sports is big in Texas. I'm just saying, I'm going to do my part on the Big C Sports Show. 1:55 p.m., Friday, March 27th. Utah Department of Health, they cleared all Utah Jazz players of COVID-19, including Rudy Gobert and Donovan Mitchell, after their positive test and after they completed their isolation. They completed their isolation and quarantine. They are expected to continue social distancing measures. So I'm not going to go throughout the whole litany of things that happened, but where were you during those times? And the reason I wanted to open the show with that segment is because a lot of the times, people that pay attention to our sports stars and our sports heroes, they may or may not watch other news programs that can keep them informed. There's nothing wrong with being informed. And again, there's nothing wrong with keeping your head in the sand. A lot of people do that too. Everybody has their own choice. So I just wanted to make sure I did my part. Now, baseball, I did the tribute to baseball last week. It was actually Friday, because Thursday and Friday would have been opening day of Major League Baseball all over the universe. Really appreciate that. LA Dodgers TV network to show games in the Los Angeles market. When Major League Baseball gets back off of the pause, they're all on the Big C pause right now. But irrespective of waiting for some network to come on and show you if they're going to play your games or not, LA Dodgers networks, they reached a deal to show games in Los Angeles. And so that's important. You got to define, if you're a Dodger fan, you subscribe to DirecTV and its other subsidiaries, and you will have access to the team's regional sports network after a deal ended nearly a 7-year stalemate. They've been trying to figure out what to do for 7 years, and they figured it out now, as opposed to waiting for other networks to decide if you can see Dodger baseball. I think it's called Spectrum Networks, said it began delivering Spectrum Sportsnet Los Angeles to AT&T video subscribers on Wednesday, which is today. Happy Hump Day, by the way. And the same day the deal was announced, the agreement means that AT&T TV, DirecTV, Uverse TV, and AT&T Now customers in Southern California, Las Vegas, and Hawaii will gain access to LA Dodgers games. But it was Big C Sports that did the opening of Major League Baseball. Welcome. Big C Sports welcomes you to Chavez Ravine Dodger Stadium, 56,000 strong. And we said, let's play ball. And remember, we were telling that to the people on Friday's show. Well, now Spectrum Networks, they're going to tell you the same thing. But they are waiting until the season, pitches off. Really would love to see baseball get back in the swing of things. It's so important. Also, COVID-19, it's affected so many people. So many sports leagues. But we're big into sports. We're not up to just wanting to see who won a game. But the Chicago Cubs and the St. Louis Cardinals Major League Baseball series has been canceled in London. It was set to pitch off first pitch in the month of June. It was canceled by Major League Baseball. This came out of New York City, out of the Associated Press, that baseball's canceled the 2-game series in London between the Chicago Cubs and the St. Louis Cardinals because of the coronavirus pandemic. And the teams had been scheduled to play at Olympic Stadium June 13th and June 14th. And Baseball Commissioner Rob Manfred made the announcement in a memorandum sent to Major League Baseball employees on Wednesday. So I think it's important. Major League Baseball also said March 19th that it had scrapped the series in Mexico City and San Juan, Puerto Rico, and they'll make more decisions going forward. Major League Baseball played in Europe for the first time last June. It was June 29th and 30th, I believe, when the New York Yankees, they swept a pair of games from the Boston Red Sox, the defending world champion Boston Red Sox. It was actually played in London. And so I know that, to me, is big news. Baseball is America's game, but it is also expanding all over the world, and everything is taking the pause now. It's not just Big C Sports doing the Big C pause. Everything is doing it. It's I was just saying to all of our sponsors out there that are sponsoring shows, and you're going to sponsor a program where the mothership is going to show you a story of Michael Jordan as if other people don't know. I love sports too, and I love it too as part of what I'm doing. But at the same time, if we just be great to see some equal time. Because to ogle over Michael Jordan, an erstwhile athlete, one of the greatest basketball players ever, we all know that. Is he the best college basketball player? No, he only averaged about 17 and a half points a game. There's a Pistol Pete Maravich averaged a lot more than that, even though I think the great Kareem Abdul-Jabbar, Lou Alcindor, was the best college basketball player. 3 championships, I mean, come on. Everybody has their own opinion, though. But I love just paying homage to our past generations. And I wanted to open up today's show by saying that people don't always pay attention to the news. So they may count on their sports brethren, which means that you can use both eyes now. You can use both ears. Oftentimes men are told that they don't listen, and I can't say that that I missed that classroom. I've been told I don't listen at times too. It's not that we don't listen. It's called perceptive hearing. We can hear what we want to hear. But I think a lot of times, especially when some sports programs that have call-ins and they try to screen their callers, and then you get some dumb guy on there saying, "I can't believe you're talking about politics and news," and he wants to hear who won a game. And a lot of games have been on pause. He didn't know that because he doesn't pay attention. He only wants to know who's playing a game. But for a lot of people that do want to know, it's just for you. It's not for everybody. But I do want to pay some thoughts and homage to the Say Hey Kid. Everybody wants Major League Baseball. Everybody does. Not many people want it more than the Say Hey Kid, Willie Mays. A lot of young people, they want to see it too. I remember seeing my mother had coached not Major League Baseball, but she had coached a Little League baseball game. When I was about 11 years old, we won a league championship. When I was 11 years old, I even struck out 11 batters in one game. So I know people are involved in what goes on in sports, but it's amazing when you think about someone like Willie Mays, the Say Hey Kid, and he was also at a time in his career, on the pause because sports will come back. But you got to be healthy when it comes back too. During the Korean War, the Army had drafted the Say Hey Kid, Willie Mays, in 1952, and he missed half of that season as well as all of the 1953 season. And Willie Mays, to me, he's the prodigal son of baseball, at least here in the Bay Area, known as Willie Howard Mays Jr., born in 1931, nicknamed the Say Hey Kid. Obviously, we know him as an American former professional baseball center fielder. He spent almost 22 seasons in Major League Baseball and playing in the New York and San Francisco markets before finishing with the New York Mets. He's regarded as one of the greatest baseball players of all time, and he was actually elected into the Baseball Hall of Fame in 1979. And I just love the fact that people may not know the fact about Willie Mays. Is part of the Negro League, the Birmingham Blackhorns, 1948 to 1950, and then went on to play the majors for the Giants, actually in New York, and then San Francisco Giants and the New York Mets. He was a 24-time All-Star from 1954 to 1973, World Series champion in 1954, 2-time National League MVP 1954 and 1965, National League Rookie of the Year 1951, 12-time Gold Glove Award winner 1957 to 1968, Roberto Clemente Award 1971, National League batting champion in 1954, 4-time National League home run leader 1955, 1962, 1964, and 1965. Talk about a player that could actually play baseball the way it's meant to be played. No wonder he's in the Hall of Fame. I love mentioning that. Think about the great Say Hey Kid. Hit 4 home runs in one game on April 30th, 1961. The San Francisco Giants, they retired number 24. The San Francisco Giants Wall of Fame, Major League Baseball All-Century Team, Major League Baseball All-Time Team. That's the Say Hey Kid. Everybody has their own thoughts about who's great in this world of sports. But I just wanted to take today to just pay homage to the great Say Hey Kid, because he's always been such a part of baseball here, at least in the Bay Area. And I love just having those thoughts of baseball again. And I want to see football back, of course. I want to see basketball. But at this time, what I really want to see, I want to see my family healthy. That's what I want. So I make sure that I do my part every time God gives me breath when I can do the Big C Sports Show. I want to talk to other people as if maybe they don't hear it elsewhere. I kind of feel bad for kids that have a parent that only wants to talk about sports. I mean, I really mean that. There's some people that walk around, they love sports, but all they want to hear about is a game. They're obtuse to what's really happening in our society. I want to make sure that our show is a little bit different from that. Something that talking about kids and the studies that are being done about who's going to achieve in school. People have an attack on affirmative action. That still goes on. NCAA racial graduation rates they're really affected by high school kids and high school programs and where they come from. If you come from a private high school, you're more apt to have access to AP courses, which is called advanced placement courses, than if you come from a public high school or an inner city school. And because a lot of times kids deal with a lack of funding and lack of curriculum, that even goes back to kindergarten. That's where it all starts. And there's some studies done by the NCAA, and they're talking about the gap that still exists between black and white for the most part. But if they track kids from kindergarten all the way through college, you'll realize a lot of kids that are Caucasian, not all, but a lot, when they get to the college level, they've had advanced placement courses in their classrooms. A lot of inner city schools may be way behind based on some of the parents that I've talked to that moved from one district to another. And there's some people that I remember saying when they came into the school district where my kids went to school in Northern California, it's called a STAR school, where they have advanced placement courses. So a lot of the, I won't say a lot, but some of the public schools and the private schools, they have the same or similar curriculum. But there's some other programs that don't have that. And so they become, as I remember having a conversation with a lady who had moved her child into a school, and this kid was being taught the same academic curriculum in the 5th grade of a good school as they were learning in the 9th grade of a school that did not have everything they needed. So even from high school to elementary schools, those factors are there. So the point I want to make is when people have that quote-unquote, oh, that's affirmative action, you got to think about it. A lot of white kids have had affirmative action ever since they got into a school district that may have redlined people of color from even buying a home in that area. So, for example, if you're in a school in Southern California like Mater Dei of Santa Ana, that's a private school. There's a St. John Bosco, a Bellflower, that's a private school. Loyola High School of Los Angeles, they're a private school. I think there's a Justin Junipero Serra High School in Southern California, that's also a private school. There is another school called Servite of Anaheim. That's a private school too. They're going to have a better curriculum than, say, someone that goes to Inglewood High School or someone that goes to Crenshaw High School in Southern California, Dorsey High School in Southern California, Verbum Day High School in Southern California. If you're all the way across the country on the East Coast, in the South, in Florida, you have St. Thomas Aquinas out of Fort Lauderdale, Florida. That's a private school. You have schools like IMG Academy. Those are academies. You got to have a lot of money to go to those schools, but they have all the academic things that you need to succeed. If you're at Manatee High School in Florida, public schools. Compare that to Central High School of Miami. That's a public school. Miami Southwest, that's a public school. They're not going to have the same curriculum, so they may not have the same academic GPA that you'll get from kids that have those schools. If you're in the Bay Area, there's a school called De La Salle over here in Concord in Northern California. Not only are they one of the best athletic programs, but academically they have everything they need compared to maybe Logan High School in Union City. Or if you're going to Bishop O'Dowd High School in Oakland, or if you're going to St. Ignatius in San Francisco, or Bellarmine Prep in San Jose, St. Francis of Mountain View. You may have different academic and AP courses that you may not get if you're going to Pittsburgh High School in the East Bay, or Antioch High School in the East Bay, or Livermore High School, or some of the other schools around the area. And I think people know that's important. So I just wanted to make sure I do my part in talking about that, because the difference in the average, which is called GSR, for white men athletes is like 94%, and for the black men players in college, 80% graduated. That's what they're talking about, athletic achievements. And I think that's important to talk about, but also when it comes to players, it's down, I think, 14% from 2018. I mean, everybody has their own thoughts about what happened and how it happens, but there's a lot of kids that get into college and they don't have the advanced placement courses when it comes in to place, and that matters too. Before we do the Big C pause, also known as the Big C timeout, the women's studies also found the difference in the average GSR between white players at 95.9% and black players at 89.6%. This is for the women. The gap was a little bit smaller than it was for men, but it's just important to show that overall the GSR for women was 93% compared to 82% for men. So women tend to do better in studies than men, maybe because they're not focused on going pro. They're focused on really hitting the books. I just want to make sure that people know that. They can Google that because there's some studies that came out that are still talking about the racial graduation rate in the gap for men and women when it comes to NCAA teams. It's all about how you start and how you finish. A lot has to do with how you start. We're going to take the Big C pause, also known as the Big C timeout. When we come back, I'm going to bring up another racial stat that I think everybody should pay attention to. I think it's really important. All right, we are back from the Big C timeout, also known as the Big C pause. You can get Big C Sports Monday through Friday at 5 and 6 p.m. worldwide on the #1 podcast network in the universe, iHeartRadio podcast. You can follow Big C Sports on Apple Podcasts. You can follow Big C Sports on Google Podcasts. You can follow Big C Sports on Spreaker.com. And an app that I love is called Google. Our Alexa, just say Google. Our Alexa, play Big C Sports Podcast. You will hear from our sponsors. You will hear Welcome to the Show. I will introduce Big C as the Mystic, and he'll do his thing. And I really appreciate the way that he's doing it from 3,000 miles away when he's not digging for gold. Big C, how much gold do you really need? I know you got a lot in your pockets. Maybe want to take a bucket or a gunny sack next time you want to dig for gold. It's all fair, love, and war. You can follow Big C Sports, as I mentioned, on Xfinity, Comcast TV, Roku TV, Apple TV, Amazon Fire TV, and a lot of smart TVs all over the universe. Really appreciate that. Also, I know a lot of governors have been putting people on lockdown. You can't do open houses now in California, so a lot of people are doing things online. I know we're still looking at launching a real estate listing channel in the spring of 2020. You know, we can't do what the governors say. Unlike in Florida and Texas, we're going to listen to governors. So, but there's still a way to put properties, you know, on TV platforms, radio platforms. Also looking at starting a podcast real estate show, also coming this spring. We're going to always find a way going forward. Really appreciate that. The goal is to get 100 real estate brokers to put their properties on TV, or perhaps on the podcast show, the Big C team. That's going to be launching too. So really looking forward to bringing that information to you. I want to make sure that people know that's important. Going back to the graduation rate, the GSR is called graduation success rate. You know, we talk about kids that get exploited through schools. Don't want to see that. But I did hear a couple of good old boys on the platform. They were still talking about how do we get rid of affirmative action. They knew a white kid that didn't get into college and the black kid got the job, or got the chance to get into school, etc. We've heard that garbage before. But think about what's happened in this country that has benefited so many people that call themselves white. That's why I'm saying on your applications, if you're a person of color, the computers don't know the difference. When you mark other on the application, it's considered white. Computers don't know that, and maybe a lot of people don't know that too. And they've already set aside only so many spaces for people of color to get loans, home loans, different kind of loans. Just start marking other on your application. You're considered white, and you're more apt to get the loan. That's just the way the science that the company or the country has developed over the years, and many companies do the same garbage. The college scandals, for you people who are upset about affirmative action helping people of color who've been historically marginalized by our economic system and educational system, college scandals, remember that? The college scandals that caught a lot of parents all over the universe. They caught a lot of parents cheating to get their kids into college. And the overwhelming majority, you can Google this, the overwhelming majority came from white families that also have been getting kids or getting their kids into private schools from elementary schools all the way to high school and college. Remember I just told you about the graduation success rate, the GSRs, how they were just saying the NCAA did a study, and a lot of the white kids that go to these private schools, I grew up in a school district where they have more advanced placement classes. Their kids have been able to get and study curriculum that a lot of inner city schools just don't get. They don't have the funding for it, and they just have been left behind. except until the Big C Sports Show came along. They can Google everything now, but there are programs that were enacted to keep people from getting access to the same information. So those private schools, from elementary to college, collectively white, they've been higher, the grades have been higher, the GPAs. They've studied advanced placement classes. So by the time you do that to elementary and high school, when you get into college, you've already been college prepped. Bellarmine Prep in San Jose, St. Francis of Mountain View. You have schools De La Salle of Concord, California, St. Ignatius of San Francisco. I mean, there's so much that goes on that helps people understand modern day Santa Ana, and talked about St. John Bosco, Loyola of Los Angeles. There's so many others. St. Ignatius, Cleveland, Ohio. St. John Bosco is one of the most, I guess, gifted athletic programs, but academically also down in Southern California. So they have the money, they have the resources, but when you look at these programs in college, for a lot of the parents that wanted to fight affirmative action, if you Google the defendants in these cases, over 90% are white parents. Yet affirmative action is still under attack by mainstream universities unless you can play sports for free and make them millions of dollars. And we're seeing right now, while there are some athletic programs that they are in jeopardy of collapsing if they don't get sports in the next 12 months because they don't have the black kids coming in there. The big programs like Ohio State, they just shut down their whole athletic department for the summertime. I mean, you think that's important? I think it's important. That means they're not going to go out and recruit the black athlete. They may have to be stuck with the white kids. I don't know, but you can look at their athletic field and see if that matters. I think if you just look at the people that want to end affirmative action, that's not African Americans wanting to do that. Looking for an equal playing field if possible. Cheating on your kids, cheating to get your kids into college, it turns them into monsters, some people say. But everybody knows of a TV actor by the name of Felicity Huffman, and they had some initial hearings in the racketeering case involving the allegedly fraudulent admission of children to elite universities in the United States of America. That was in front of a federal courthouse in Los Angeles just last year. People can Google that too. You got to know that. So I just wanted to make that PSA, as people are still complaining about affirmative actions, as a lot of kids are having a hard time even getting into school because they've closed all the schools down until we get through this pandemic. That's just so important. I know everybody has to understand it. You got to know that's important. A lot of these parents that don't want affirmative actions, they've been charged with having bribes or cheating on standardized tests to get their kids into better colleges than they deserve, but they don't want affirmative action? Are you telling me they don't want affirmative action, but they're paying thousands of dollars to get their kids into college with bribes and cheating? What person at a school would turn his blind eye to someone? Hey, here's a check of a few $100,000 or $50,000 or $100,000, whatever some of these parents have been doing. I just wanted to make sure I mentioned that, as we have this idea in the NCAA that they're measuring what kids are doing better graduating college than those who are not. Again, it goes back to advanced placement classes. When you have it in your educational system growing up, a lot of inner city schools and even some rural schools, they don't have that. So that's my soapbox. I'm pro affirmative action. I'm pro everybody have the opportunity to pursue liberty and justice for all, not just for those who have money. NBA news, Brooklyn Nets, they say the players who test positive for coronavirus are symptom-free, including Kevin Durant being the biggest one. That has to be some light at the end of the tunnel for a lot of people. They tested positive for coronavirus, and that, think about this, 2 weeks later, 4 Brooklyn Nets players, NBA players, who tested positive for coronavirus, they are now symptom-free. General Manager Sean Marks said in a conference call with reporters today. And I think that's so important. The team announced that on, I think it was right around March 17th, that players had contracted COVID-19. And I know Rudy Gobert came out earlier with the Utah Jazz, and then it tended to spread around the league, several players. Thank goodness that Adam Silver canceled NBA basketball. And I say thank goodness because Florida still, it took them for today to shut down the state, especially their beaches. How many people did they save from coming in contact with that? I just think that's so important because health is more important to me than sports. Of course, a lot of the NBA teams have been the vanguards in making sure that message got out in the sports universe, and I'm really appreciative to hear that. If you think about tennis, Wimbledon 2020 and coronavirus, which one's going to win? Well, Wimbledon is now canceled due to coronavirus pandemic, as health is now considered more important than playing a game, Big C. And I know we talked about that before we even did a show on it, that health really is more important than a game. To some people, Wimbledon 2020 was canceled in response to the COVID-19 announcement made today. And, of course, when you think about the legacy of it, health concerns have to be more important, especially when we're dealing with pandemics. The 134th championships will be, instead, they're going to be played June 28th through July 11th in 2021. Isn't that incredible? As we still have people in Texas gathering for a spring break against the common sense of scientists and medical doctors, and 28 of those kids came up positive for coronavirus, and they don't believe in science. They believe it was a Democratic hoax. Maybe they watched Sean Hannity, and they don't even believe we had coronavirus until, after a couple of more people became sick because they listened to the garbage at times. Wimbledon has not been canceled since World War II. The 134th championship was rescheduled, and again will be staged June 28th to July 11th in 2021. I just think that's important because, as I always say, not everybody watches the news. Some people get their news from sports. In fact, there's a lot of mainstream people that may have known about Wimbledon being canceled, but there's a lot of sports people that did not know about it until a sports show told them about it. That's why I'm so adamant to sponsors that sponsor these programs that do nothing other than ogle over some athlete, some athlete that used to play sports back in the day and no longer is playing, some erstwhile player that gets on and says, this is what I did. I mean, that has a place, but when the house is on fire and the floods come, do you watch the game or do you get people out safe? I think it's important. And I want to do my part with Big C Sports to make sure we do that, because not everybody is going to perish from this. A lot of people will succeed. A lot of people will prosper, but we have to go forward. We know pandemics have happened before. The Spanish flu, it ended the Stanley Cup Championship in 1919, but things will get better for people who are informed. People just got to know this. It's so important. If you go back to the Seattle Metropolitans, they were 20 minutes away from a second Stanley Cup title in the spring of 1919. Just 20 minutes from adding their names to the trophy. And they were playing the the Canadiens, actually. And there was an outbreak of the Spanish flu, and it killed over 700,000 people. Everybody knows that that's something it's a moment in history that we'll never forget. And I believe that COVID-19 is not going to have that much of an impact because so many people now, they have access to news. If they listen to it, if they're not just focused on who won a game. And with Big C Sports, as I'm talking to our sponsors, I want to make sure that we do our part. That has to be important. It just has to be important. So if everybody can just pay attention to the news, listen to our medical doctors, listen to science. I know you want to know who won the game. There's no games being played right now other than the game called life, and who's healthy through this. So when it mattered most about the 1917 season is that there were people who survived. There's also another instance, I think it was 1893, where the championship trophy was not awarded in the matchup between the Canadiens, or the champions of the NHL, the Canadiens, and the Pacific Coast Hockey Association, the Metropolitans. It was called off with the series tied back in that time. I think the only other time NHL has had a lockout, I believe it was the 2005 season. It might be 2004, but I'm pretty sure it was 2005. And that's so important to me because as we know that we came through it before, I've always said this to Big C, I believe sports will guide people out of a lot of problems. It can bring people together. Everybody's doing the pause. Sports has been used to bring people together for many many world wars that we've had, World War I and II. pandemics, just talked about the Spanish flu of the past, this too shall pass. Everybody's doing the sports pause. And when sports guys say, hey, I have an idea, let's get on a ship and go play basketball while houses are burning and people are dying and doctors are getting infected and nurses are having a hard time coming up with the equipment to help save people, let's just go play basketball. How does that make sense? It doesn't make any sense. But with sports media and athletes, when we share news that gets people involved, to me, I think we can go a long way in being the vanguard for helping solve a lot of problems that's happening in our country. At least I, as Big C Sports, I want to be known for that. And I just want to repeat this again because, man, if you watch the news too much, you can become a little bit frightened. So I understand people want to put their head in the sand, and sometimes I feel like putting my head in the sand, but I can't do it. So in the world of 1919, was hardly a place for fun and games. Just like now, people don't want to say, let's stop watching sports, let's watch more sports, where there are no sports. There are people that call a radio talk show host and say, I can't believe that all you do is talk about what's going on in the world. Their sports are on pause. And like a war like no other had ravaged Europe, it killed untold millions, leaving people on that continent devastated. The Spanish flu pandemic, it was waning, but still wreaking havoc in the sports world. There were some 50 million people who passed away worldwide because of Spanish flu, including 670,000 in the United States or more. Hundreds of thousands of troops from various countries were still in Europe. The war was over, but they didn't have a lot to do, and sports became it was a way to galvanize people, to bring people together. I know everybody thinks about how we're going to get through, and we're going to show replays of Michael Jordan's history in sports. It'd be great if they could juxtapose that also to what we can do now to keep ourselves safer. I think it's important. I mean, everybody knows how sports brings people together. A century before the Tokyo Olympics were postponed because of the coronavirus, the spread across Earth, there's a lot of things that sports has done to help people. Italians played basketball for the first time, while Americans won medals by throwing grenades like the baseballs they tossed at home. There was golf and tug of war, and a black American was a big star 17 years before Jesse Owens stared down Adolf Hitler in Berlin. There's so many things that have happened in the world of sports, and athletes from all over the globe have done their part to make sure that people are better off. And I'm hoping that we can look back someday and say this coronavirus, yeah, it ravaged a lot of people, but we also stayed on top of it because we're smart and we pay attention to science, and we don't just have all of our head in the sand. So when you think of some of the best cities for sports and what they're doing to get through this Big C pause, everybody has their own thought. I'm here in Northern California, so I love the Bay Area and Northern California sports. But when you look at some of the better regions in the country for sports, everybody has their own product of view, and that's the choice. Everybody has, at some point in time, used sports to bring people together. You think about the city of Phoenix in Arizona. They have 4 sports teams. The last championship in the last 50 years. They think about this. The average winning percentage over the last 50 years is 48%. The last championship of the Arizona Diamondbacks in 2001. So they use sports to bring people together. In Arizona as well as Toronto, there's 3 professional sports teams and that play in the United States. Championships in the last 50 years, they've had 3. The average win percentage over the last 50 years, they win about 48% of their games. The last championship in Toronto, Canada, the defending NBA champions, Toronto Raptors, that was in 2019. You think about Oakland out here in the Bay Area. The number of teams, well, right now you just have the Oakland A's because the Oakland Raiders are moving down to Las Vegas. Championships over the past 50 years, there have been 6. Average win percentage over 50 years, 51%. And the last championship came 1989, the Oakland A's, and they're still in the East Bay doing their thing for the fans. Go down to Houston, where sports can bring people together. Number of 3 pro teams, 3 of them. Championships games in the last 50 years. Championships won, they've been 3. Average winning percentage over the last 50 years. They won about 50% of their games. In the last championship, man, there's a lot of cameras in the stands and a lot of cameras in the dugouts, but it was the Houston Astros in 2017. Man, there was a lot of cameras in the dugout, Big C. I don't understand what that's all about. Kind of blinds you when you're taking pitchers and people are up at bat, that flash can really blind people at times, Big C. I think some of the good old boys in Texas know what I mean. Where there's Minneapolis, they have 4 teams last championship, Minnesota Twins in 1991. Going into Montreal, Canada, that one team at the time. And now they have the NHL, Montreal Canadiens. Everybody loves sports to bring people together. Championships in the last 50 years, 9 of them. Average win percentage over the last 50 years, 54%. The last championship, the Montreal Canadiens. Sports has brought a lot of people together, and they're doing that thing up there as well. So everybody, I won't go through all the cities, but I know a lot of people that love sports to bring them together. I look at the Bay Area, San Francisco Bay Area. There's 3 professional teams. Champions in the last 50 years have been 12 championships in the last 50 years between the basketball and football and baseball. Average win percentage 51%. The last championship, the Golden State Warriors in the 2018 season. So that brings a lot of people together. The 49ers came up a little bit short in the Super Bowl against the Kansas City Chiefs. And that's just it's a nice thing to know. Also Los Angeles, number of teams, 8 teams. There's been 18 championships in the last 50 years. They win about 54% of their games. However, the last champion in Los Angeles was the Los Angeles Kings, and that was in 2014. If you go over there to New York, number of sports teams, professional teams, 8 championships over the last 50 years, 20 of them. Average winning percentage for the New York pro teams, 50%. The last championship came in the 2011, the New York Giants, and they knocked off, of course, the New England Patriots. So they have their own way of winning in the way of bringing people together. Sports can do it like a lot of other things can't do it. And I know everybody has, at some point in time, to use sports to figure out how to get better. And we all got to do our part. But I want to just say this, as I started the show, is important to me. 28 students from Texas, they went on spring break to Mexico and tested. There was actually more than 28 students, but 28 tested positive for coronavirus. And maybe when I say some news people call it a Democratic hoax, some people believe you. I think people fighting to get rid of Obamacare, the POTUS, the Trump administration, they're still in court trying to disband Obamacare. In a time where nurses are getting sick, doctors are getting sick, Obamacare is something that people have to understand. You cannot be denied insurance because you had a pre-existing condition. Who's not going to have a pre-existing condition now? I mean, think about that. Guys like Rush Limbaugh that come on his soapbox every day. I don't like Obamacare, blah, 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 blah. And he's battling cancer. Isn't that something? So even when guys like Sean Hannity or POTUS or Mike Pence, they're telling you that they want to get rid of it. It's in the courts now. If it wasn't sad, it would be a joke. But it's in the courts now. You can Google that. And going back to Texas, it was about 70 students from the University of Texas. You know, the Longhorns with the football stadium, they're expanding by another 15,000 seats to get more people to watch a game. Well, they chartered a plane to Cabo San Lucas, Mexico. It was late in March. They took the trip despite the public health warnings to avoid crowding as well as non-essential travel. You know, like what they did in California with Governor Gavin Newsom. That's important, as we have the USNS Comfort docked on the Hudson in New York to help people. So think about that. I was listening to Mike Pence talk today in POTUS. Even with the coronavirus pandemic, Mike Pence and POTUS, they're working to repeal and replace Obamacare as Americans are getting sick. Insurance companies can decline you if you have a pre-existing condition. Even healthcare workers and doctors are getting sick. And people are wanting you to watch the Michael Jordan documentary. Isn't that something? You can do whatever you want to do. Just do it with a wide eyes. New York Governor Andrew Cuomo, his brother Chris Cuomo, a CNN anchor and correspondent, has tested positive for coronavirus. He's still working from home. He works in his basement. I really enjoy his broadcast and his reporting. My thoughts and prayers are out to the Cuomo family. He and his family will do well. I'm hoping and praying they will. I really enjoy Chris Cuomo and Don Lemon, the work with CNN News. I think they really are shining moments in the world of broadcast. It's not about who you like or who you don't like. Just Google what people say so we're not all hooked and hoodwinked when it comes to sports. You can follow Big C Sports 24 hours a day, 7 days a week on the #1 podcast network, in the universe, iHeartRadio podcast. You can follow Big C Sports on Apple Podcasts. You can follow Big C Sports on Google Podcasts. You can follow Big C Sports on Spreaker.com. And the apps that I love are by Google and Alexa. Just say Google or Alexa, play Big C Sports Podcast. You will hear from our sponsors. You will hear Welcome to the Show. I will introduce Big C as the Mystic from 3,000 miles away when he's not digging for gold, and he'll do his thing, and I really appreciate the way things are going with Big C Sports. You can follow Big C Sports on Xfinity, Comcast TV, Roku TV, Apple TV, Amazon Fire TV, and a lot of smart TVs all over the universe. Looking forward to launching a real estate channel, listing channel in the spring of 2020. The goal is to recruit 100 real estate brokers, list their properties on TV. If McDonald's can do it, car dealerships can do it, sports teams can do it, you can do it too, and let real estate be shown on TV. Also, I know the news with the governors saying that you got to have, they can't let you do open houses right now for obvious reasons. So I'm also considering doing a podcast show. It'll be a weekly show on what's going on in the world of real estate. People are still refinancing homes, still trying to buy homes. And as you come out of this, you want to make sure you're still out there in the market, that you didn't recoil and put your head in the sand. So really looking forward to bringing that to people also. DAZN, some people call it DAZN, like a hotel, but it's called DAZN, DAZN Network. They won't be buying sports or paying sports leagues during coronavirus pandemic. That means the sponsors that will sponsor their fighting, they're not going to be doing that. The worldwide streaming service is suspending payments while the games are not taking place. Big C talked about that. Some people call it a nuclear clause, and they decide not to do it. So streaming service DAZN is in the first fights. They're actually the first rights holder to tell sporting leagues that they will cease payments due to canceled games and other events, according to the sources that are out there. And on March 2nd, just think about this, as this is right about the time POTUS called this a Democratic hoax. They announced a huge expansion in the efforts to bring themselves to over 200 countries, and they wanted to do that by May with boxing's Canelo Alvarez versus Billy Joe Sanders, and the marquee event was to drive more people to the service. However, the fight, along with most other sporting events, has been on the Big C pause because of the coronavirus pandemic. Big C Sports is not on pause. We're still doing our thing. DAZN launched in 2005 and rose to prominence to combat the sports space, and is the number one way to legally stream the boxing and UFC events worldwide. And it's unclear what they're going to do now, because if you're not paying people, oftentimes people just don't show up. And they were not offering refunds to customers who've purchased annual subscriptions. It's allowing members to pause their memberships for up to 4 months. Big C, why is everybody doing the Big C pause? We've been doing the Big C pause in the timeout for a long time, and I love when I look up and see that other people are doing it too. I just hope that people can stay informed of what's going on in the sports universe. It's really important that we say that. I just want to make sure that I always do my part. I'm asking, of course I believe in science, but I'm asking for that 1 million pastors all over this great planet to just ask for God's providence to aid science and medicine and our healthcare workers so that we can find a cure for this pandemic. A lot like treating high blood pressure or diabetes. They don't have a cure, but they can treat it with medication. So that's my hope, that Big C Sports, for you sponsors that pay money, or if you're DAZN, you're not paying anybody, but for you sponsors that pay money, that we're bringing it to you live, extemporaneous. We do it every day. We bring you our version of sports and news, and I think it's important. All I say is juxtapose what we do to what some of the other companies are doing that are not bringing you anything that can keep you safe. It's important, because if we don't do it, then who will? They're going to have you stuck watching erstwhile athletes on TV and tape, and they're not doing anything right now to help you. And I just want to make sure we do our part. As I always say, Big C, back in the day, there's a man by the name of Drew Boudini Brown. He was known as Muhammad Ali's right-hand man, and he would always tell Ali, with all you got to use, how can you lose? Rumble, young man, rumble. Big C, what are you looking forward to in the sports universe? I hope and pray that there is a cure for this pandemic, that we take our heads and lift it out of the sand and pay attention to people who are telling you to pay attention to the medical science and the healthcare industry more so than some erstwhile athlete arguing about who's bigger, stronger, and faster. That's just my opinion. You can follow Big C Sports 24 hours a day, 7 days a week on the #1 podcast network in the universe, iHeartRadio Podcast, Apple Podcasts, and Google Podcasts too. As we always tell you, there's never, ever an excuse for domestic violence. If you know any man or woman going through that garbage, please pick up the phone and call 911, because no man or woman should ever have to go through that garbage on their own. And as we always tell you on every Big C Sports show, we thank you, we appreciate you, and we hope that you have a super fantastic day.